Assalamualaikum, dear students. We are going to start our English Book 1 question and answers in short stories. The first is in the list, lesson number 1, button, button. Now we are proceeding in the lecture. This is the lesson number 1, button, button. And now it's question and answers. These are questions, short questions, long questions to understand the lesson, short story in a proper way. These are contents of your book, and this is the theme. Mr. Stewart, an agent of an international organization, gave Mr. and Mrs. Arthur Levis a temptation of $50,000 if they pushed the button of a mechanism that would kill some unknown person anywhere in the world. Arthur opposed the idea and considered it a murder, but his wife Norma found it beneficial for improving the lifestyle by purchasing a cottage on the island and having a chance to take a trip to Europe. Norma, overcome by the temptation, pushed the button in the absence of her husband and got him killed in an accident. These are short questions. Here are the questions. These are question and answers. Why did Norma consider the tone and attitude of Mr. Stewart offensive? Now we will come to its answer. Why did Norma consider the tone and attitude of Mr. Stewart offensive? Norma को Mr. Stewart का लहजा और अंदाज जारहाना क्यों लगा? Norma considered the tone and attitude of Mr. Stewart offensive because he insisted on giving information to her about the gadget, and she had told him that she was not interested in the offer. Question 2. Why did Arthur disagree with his wife? Arthur disagreed with his wife because he considered that the killing of a human being is an immoral act, whether one knows the person or not. Question 3. Why did Norma try to persuade her husband to agree with her? नॉर्मा अपने हस्बैंड को अपनी सोच से मुत्तफिक करने के लिए क्यों मना रही थी? नॉर्मा tried to persuade her husband because she wanted to materialize her dreams. For example, she wanted to go on a trip to Europe, to buy a cottage on the island, to have a nice apartment with furniture and a car. Now question 4. What were the reasons Norma gave to her husband to accept the offer? नॉर्मा ने उस पेशकश को कबूल करने के लिए अपने शौहर को क्या वजूहात बताई? नॉर्मा ने आर्थर को कायल करने के लिए और मनाने की कोशिश की कि अगर वो मरने वाले शख्स को नहीं जानते तो ये कत्ल तो नहीं होगा, और ये कि शायद कोई खपती अरबपति आदमी किसी खास मकसद के लिए ही ऐसा करा हो. Norma tried to convince Arthur that it would not be a murder if they did not know the person who died, and that probably shayad some eccentric millionaire might be doing it for some research purpose. हो सकता है उसने कोई तहकीक ही करनी हो. Question 5 में हम देखते हैं, Why did Mr. Stewart continue persuading Norma? मिस्टर स्टीवर्ट ने नॉर्मा को बार बार कायल करना क्यों जारी रखा? मिस्टर स्टीवर्ट continued persuading Norma because he was sure that she would ultimately fall a prey to his temptation of prize money, as she had not declined the offer outrightly. Now the question 6. What was the message Norma received on pushing the button? बटन को दबाने पे ही नॉर्मा को क्या पैगाम वसूल हुआ? On pushing the button, Norma received the message of the accidental death of her husband. A voice on the telephone informed her that a showing crowd had pushed Arthur in front of the subway train. And the question 7. What is the significance of Arthur's life insurance policy? Arthur की बीमा पॉलिसी की क्या अहमियत है? Arthur's life insurance policy was for $25,000 in case of the accidental death. Its worth was $50,000 with double indemnity, and the same amount of the $50,000 was offered as prize money. आर्थर की बीमा पॉलिसी 25,000 की थी। हादसाती मोड़ पर दुगने हो जाने के बाद इसकी कीमत $50,000 बन जानी थी और मिस्टर स्टीवर्ट ने भी $50 की ही पेशकश की थी। Question 8. Did Norma remain normal on hearing the news of the accident of her husband? No, Norma did not remain normal on hearing the news of the accidental death of her husband. Even she could not breathe. She was feeling numbness due to sudden shock. नॉर्मा शोर की हादसाती मौत को सुनकर तवाज़न बरकरार ना रख सकी। वो सांस न खींच पा रही थी। इस सदमे से वो बिल्कुल शल हो गई थी। Now, question 1 in additional. What was lying by the front door and what was written on it? A cup-shaped carton sealed with tape was lying by the front door. The name and address of Mr. and Mrs. Arthur Lewis were printed by hand on it. Question 2, additional question. What was inside the carton? There was a push button unit fastened to a small wooden box. What message was attached with scotch tape on the bottom of carton? The message attached with the scotch tape on the bottom of the box was that Mr. Stewart would call on them at 8 p.m. Question 4. Why did Norma repress a smile? Norma repressed a smile because she was sure it was a sales pitch. Why did Norma consider the tone and attitude of Mr. Stewart offensive? Norma considered the tone and attitude of Mr. Stewart offensive because he insisted on giving information to her about the gadget, though she had told him that she was not interested in the offer. Question 6. What did Mr. Stewart withdraw from his pocket? Mr. Stewart withdrew a small sealed envelope carrying the key to the bell unit. Who was Mr. Stewart and what was his offer? Or what did Mr. Stewart explain about the push button gadget? Mr. Stewart was a sales representative of an anonymous organization. He explained if they push the button somewhere in the world, someone they don't know will die. In return, they will receive a payment of $50,000. Question 8. What did Mr. Stewart reply about his company? Mr. Stewart replied that he was not at liberty to tell them. However, he assured them that the organization was of international scope. How did Arthur react on the offer of Mr. Stewart? Arthur became angry at Mr. Stewart and asked him to leave. He also tore his card into pieces. What did Arthur do with the card? Arthur tore it into two halves and tossed the pieces onto the table and asked Mr. Stewart to leave. 11 question, extra question. How did Norma try to convince Arthur about his Stewart's offer? Norma tried to convince her husband by saying that it would not be a murder if they don't know the person who died and that probably some eccentric millionaire might be doing it. Why did Arthur disagree with his wife? Arthur disagreed with his wife because he considered that the killing of a human being is an immoral act. We have done it already, whether one knows the person or not. Why did and how did Norma pick the card halves? While Norma was leaving for her office, she saw the card halves on the table. Impulsively, she dropped them into her purse to contact to Mr. Stewart. Now, question 14. What was printed on the card presented by Mr. Stewart? Only the name of Mr. Stewart and his telephone number were printed on the card. What did Mr. Stewart assure Norma about the dying person? Mr. Stewart assured Norma that it could be anyone in the world. Of course, she would not know and see the person who died. What people might be killed according to Norma? According to Norma, some old Chinese peasant किसान 10,000 miles away 10 मील के फासले पर or some diseased native in the Congo might be killed. Now question number 17. According to Arthur, who might be killed on pushing the button? Arthur asks Norma, what would happen if some baby boy in Pennsylvania or some beautiful girl in the next block are killed? What is Arthur's opinion about murdering an unknown person? Arthur is against killing any man. He believes that it makes no difference who is murdered. Murder is still a murder. वो कहता है कि कत्ल कत्ल है किसी का भी हो, जान हर एक की कीमती है. What justification Norma gave to Arthur about murdering an unknown person? जिसको हम जानते ही नहीं है वो कहती है उसके मरने से हमें क्या? Norma believes that it makes no difference to kill a person if one has never seen him in one's life and will never see, and someone whose death one does not even have to know about. ऐसा बिल्कुल भी नहीं है. जिंदगी हर एक की कीमती है, हाँ हम उसे जानते हो या ना जानते हो. Why did Norma get up earlier than usual to cook things for Arthur's breakfast? Norma wanted to please her husband. She also wanted to prove him that she was not selfish. That's why she got up earlier and offended him a good breakfast. Why did Norma try to persuade her husband to agree with her? कि वो उसका husband उसको okay कर दे. Norma tried to persuade her husband because she wanted to materialize her dreams. She wanted to go on a trip to Europe, to buy a cottage on the island, to have a nice apartment with nice furniture and a car. Where did Norma want to visit and what did she want to buy with money? Norma wanted to go on a trip to Europe and to buy a cottage on the island. She wanted to have a nicer apartment, furniture, nicer clothes, and a nice car. Question number 23. What were the reasons Norma gave to her husband to accept the offer? Norma tried to convince Arthur that it would not be a murder if they did not know the person who died, and that probably some eccentric millionaire might be doing it for some research purpose. Again, repeating the question, what were the feelings of Norma after pushing the button? She shuddered for a while, and a chill of horror swept across her body. She thought it was ridiculous to get worked up over nothing. Question number 25, short question. What was the message Norma received on pushing the button? On pushing the button, Norma received the message of the accidental death of her husband, already discussed. A voice on the telephone informed her that a showing crowd had pushed Arthur in the front of the subway train. What was the significance of Arthur's life insurance policy? Arthur's life insurance policy was for $25,000 in case of accidental death. Its worth was $50 with double indemnity. We have discussed this question again, and the same amount of $50,000 was offered as prize money. What was inside the button unit when Norma smashed it into places? There was nothing in the box. There were no transistors, no wires, and no circuit. Even no nails or screws were seen. Did Norma remain normal on hearing the news of the death of the husband? No, Norma did not remain normal on hearing the news of the accidental death of her husband. Even she could not breathe. She was feeling numbness due to sudden shock. Question 29. What did Mr. Stewart reply to Norma about the death of her husband? Mr. Stewart sarcastically asked to Norma if she really thinks she knew her husband. कि वाकई तुम समझती थी अपने हस्बैंड को, तुम पहचानती थी उसे, तुम्हें उसकी अवेयरनेस थी? जनरल क्वेश्चन में हमारे पास है. Why did Mr. Stewart continue persuading Norma? Mr. Stewart continued persuading Norma because he was sure that she would ultimately fall a prey to his temptation of prize money, as she had not decided the offer outrightly. Now, Norma, why did Mr. Stewart return the package to Norma? Norma's call to Mr. Stewart made him realize that she would be interested in the offer. So he returned the package. Why did Norma push the button? Norma was curious by nature. She could not control her desires. She wanted to improve her lifestyle and wanted to live in the life of her dreams. Therefore, she pushed the button. Now, 33 question. How was Arthur different from his wife, Norma? Arthur and Norma were two different persons with different natures, different desires, and different moral ideas. Arthur was a thoroughly gentle man, whereas Norma was curious and greedy. How did Arthur die? Arthur died in an accident. A showing crowd pushed him from the platform in front of the subway train. Dear students, these are questions of button, and this is the exercise we have done in our class and its implication for the paper tayari. Now, the main question is write down a note on the character of Arthur. Very important question. I am stopping the page here. Arthur was a compassionate and mature person. He was not greedy like his wife Norma. He wanted to go ahead in life on the basis of his own faculties of head and heart. मेहनत के साथ आगे बढ़ना चाहता था ईमानदारी से. He was not a wise care who could be fooled by greedy offers. कोई भी उसे greedy offer देके कैप्चर नहीं कर सकता था, पागल नहीं बना सकता था. That's why he was not impressed by Mr. Stewart's offer of pushing button. He felt a hidden danger in it and asked his wife not to pay heed to it. He was a true humane who could not see anybody in trouble. He considered it an immoral act of killing somebody for the sake of money. He proved himself a mature and wise person. Question 2. नॉर्मा अपने खावन से सिंसियर और मुखलिस क्यों न रही? Why did not Norma remain true, sincere to her husband? Norma was a typical woman of modern age who wanted to enjoy all the luxuries of life. She was a greedy woman who was somehow impressed by the offer of Mr. Stewart. Unlike her husband, she did not realize any danger in it, though she was a true lover of her husband and house and pushed the button for her better future. Yet she did not respect the feelings of her husband. She wanted to get comforts of life by killing an unknown person. Arthur was right in his perception that it was a sort of murder, but she did not remain true to him and acted opposite to his wishes. She found no reward except the death of her husband. She was nonplussed, but it was too late to compensate. Question 3. Do you agree with Norma's assertion that the death of someone you have never seen is not important? क्या आप नॉर्मा के इस दावा से मुत्तफिक है कि जिस शख्स को आप नहीं जानते इसका मर जाना किसी चीज की अहमियत ही नहीं रखता? Norma represents all those women who want to enjoy the comforts and joys of life at any cost. She was a sort of lady whom we can regard as selfish and greedy. Her husband forbade her to engross herself in that stupid offer, but she asserted that the death of someone who was unknown to them would not matter. She even tried to convince him that in return they would get responsible amount to fulfill their utmost desires. She got senseless by that offer so much that she pushed the button which brought about the sad news of the death of her own husband. We also don't agree with her proposition that the death of some unknown person is not important. Man must think about his prosperity, but it does not mean to kill others. Nothing is superior to humanity. इंसानियत से बढ़कर कुछ भी नहीं होता है. Now, the last question is write the story in your own words, and this is the story. What moral lesson the story teach us? Last question. The story teaches us a moral lesson that we should not wish to get comforts of life at the cost of human life. इंसानी जिंदगी अहम है. It is a fundamental right of every person to wish for prosperity and luxurious life, but he must care for human life. Nothing is superior to humanity. Best of luck. Have a nice day. Have a nice time.